The man doesn't need to impress. He needs to be unforgettable. And to become unforgettable, he must learn to leave at the right moment and be silent in the right way. Section 1. When you stop chasing, you discover your own worth. In love, people often believe that persistence can conquer the heart. But sometimes the more you chase someone, the more you unknowingly lose yourself. When you stop chasing, not out of bitterness, not out of calculation, but because you begin to recognize your own worth, everything starts to change. Not just on the outside, but within you. You stop seeking validation in someone else's eyes. You stop forcing yourself to become someone else just to be loved. And strangely, when you stop trying to be chosen, you become more attractive than ever. Because self-possession is always the most magnetic quality. Ethan's story. Ethan was a young man living in Seattle. He worked as a graphic designer, quiet, kind, and genuine. He fell for a girl named Rachel, beautiful, charismatic, and surrounded by admirers. Ethan didn't have a sports car or a chiseled body, but he had a heart, and he gave it entirely to Rachel. For a whole year, Ethan was always the one to text first. He invited her out for coffee, checked on her when she was sick, even brought pastries to her office. Rachel didn't exactly ignore him, but she never truly entered into a relationship with him either. She kept a distance, close enough to feel cared for, but far enough to avoid commitment. One autumn day, Ethan stopped. No explanation, no blame. He stopped texting, stopped sending treats, stopped asking, "Did you sleep well?" Rachel thought he was busy. Then she thought he was upset. Then she started to feel empty. She checked Ethan's stories and saw him hiking in Colorado, then attending a creative workshop in New York, then smiling brightly with new friends. No longer the quiet, patient Ethan always waiting for her to turn around, but a man living a full life without needing her. One night, Rachel messaged, "Hey, it's been a while. I miss our coffee chats at Pike Place. Are you doing okay?" Ethan saw the message, smiled, and didn't rush to reply. The message: you don't need to become a copy of what others like. You don't need to chase someone to prove you're worthy of love. When you stop and start loving yourself, that's when you become irreplaceable. No one truly values something if they believe it will always be there, no matter how they treat it. But when you pull back your energy, when you're no longer always available, you become scarce. And value always follows scarcity. Stopping the chase isn't a loss. It's the rediscovery of your identity. And the first person who must realize that is you. Section 2. Silence is not a tactic, but a sign of inner strength. Silence is a language. It is not loud, not demanding, not persuasive, but when used at the right time, it carries more power than any spoken word. In relationships, especially between men and women, a man often thinks that silence means defeat. That if he doesn't explain, doesn't hold on, doesn't keep texting, he will lose her. But the truth is, people don't lose each other because of a lack of words, but because of a lack of value. And sometimes silence is the clearest proof of that value. Caleb's story. Caleb was a man living in Austin, Texas. He worked in tech, lived minimally, and spoke very little. He once dated a girl named Madison, magnetic, strong-willed, and used to being the center of attention. Their relationship started beautifully, but soon fell into a loop. Madison would often stir up conflict just to test whether Caleb loved her enough to make peace. Every time she pouted or picked a fight, Caleb would be the one to back down, apologize, explain, and try to fix things. But then one day, after an argument with no clear reason, Madison texted, "Maybe we're not meant to be." And for the first time, Caleb didn't respond. No message, no call, no pleading. 3 days, a week, 2 weeks. Madison started feeling uneasy. She posted vague stories. She sent a few random texts like, "Hey, hope you're good." But all were met with silence. Caleb wasn't playing the silent treatment. He wasn't ghosting. He simply stayed silent. Because for the first time, he decided that his inner peace was worth more than being in a relationship lacking respect. Madison called. Caleb picked up. She asked, "Why didn't you fight for me this time?" And he simply replied, "Because I finally started fighting for myself." Reflection. A man's silence isn't an empty space for someone else to fill. It is a space for him to recover, to reflect, to reset boundaries, and sometimes to walk away. When you choose silence, it's not because you have nothing to say, but because you've matured to the point where you no longer need to say it. You no longer try to keep someone through your words. You let them go if that's what they want. And if they return, it's not because you begged, but because they realized you never lost your value, not even in your deepest silence. Silence is not a shell. It is a quiet declaration that I don't need to control anyone. I only need to remain grounded in myself. And the man who knows how to be silent at the right moment is the man who cannot be replaced. Section 3. When you stop caring, you become more attractive. There's a strange paradox in relationships. People rarely recognize your value when you're always there. But when you disappear, not to escape, but because you've chosen yourself, your absence becomes a mirror that reflects how deeply your presence used to matter. When you stop reacting to every move someone makes, you step out of the role of the one who chases and into the place of the one who is thought about. Silence may cause regret, but it's your indifference that truly makes them feel the loss. Jake's story. Jake lived in Portland, Oregon, a peaceful, leafy place where everyone seemed to be running from something to find themselves. He once had a relationship with Olivia, energetic, intelligent, but full of insecurity. They were together for 2 years, but throughout that time, Jake was always the one holding the relationship together. Olivia often tested Jake with coldness, subtle mind games, ignoring texts, posting pictures with other men, hinting at reconsidering everything. Each time Jake gave in, he texted, he called, he sent flowers, he asked, "Are you okay?" Like a faithful alarm clock reminding love to wake up. Until one day, Jake did nothing. No messages, no concern, no explanations. He quietly unfollowed her on Instagram, turned off notifications, and began focusing on himself. Morning swims, photography lessons, and enrolling in a community college philosophy class. Within a month, Olivia went from indifferent to confused. She saw Jake taking photos atop Mount Hood with a group of new friends. His smile no longer looked like someone who needed her. It was the smile of someone who had evolved. One evening, Olivia called him. "Do you really not care about me anymore?" Jake replied gently but firmly, "It's not that I don't care. I just stopped losing myself trying to hold on to someone who didn't truly want to stay." Reflection. When you stop caring what someone thinks of you, you don't become cold. You become free. People are drawn to uncertainty. When you become unpredictable, when you live your life without needing validation, others begin to imagine you. And imagination is the most powerful fuel for emotion. You don't need to be mysterious. You just need to be so authentic that no one can predict your next move, because you're no longer governed by their emotions. An attractive man is not the one who constantly makes a woman smile. He's the one who makes her wonder, did I lose something I never fully appreciated? And only when you stop seeking the answer from them, do they start seeking it in you. Section 4. When you don't react, you affirm your inner strength. Women, often unconsciously, test men, not because they want to play mind games, but because they want to know. Is the man in front of them strong enough to stand firm without needing to prove anything? It's instinct. No one wants to commit long-term to someone who's easily swayed by emotions. They want someone who can endure their complexity without collapsing. A man who doesn't react to the storm is the one who makes them rethink everything. Because reactions are easy to see, but true strength lies in not reacting. Not out of indifference, but because you've chosen peace over victory. Nathan's story. Nathan was a fitness coach in Denver, Colorado. He once dated a woman named Brooke, beautiful, intelligent, and extremely sensitive. At first, everything was great. But then Brooke began to test him. Sometimes not replying to messages, sometimes withdrawing without explanation, sometimes acting close to male co-workers just to see if Nathan would get jealous. In the past, Nathan would react. He'd get angry, question her, even try everything he could to hold on to her. But this time was different. One evening, Brooke said in frustration, "Maybe you should find someone more chill. I'm probably too much." Nathan looked at her, stayed silent for a moment and said, "Maybe I should." It wasn't that he gave up. It was that he had matured enough not to let a thoughtless statement dictate his actions. He didn't explain. He didn't argue. He didn't do anything. A few days later, Brooke texted him, not because he had convinced her, but because his silence and lack of reaction made her realize she had tested the wrong man. Reflection. When you no longer feel the need to do something every time you're provoked, you're mastering yourself. A man driven by others' emotions will always be spinning in circles. But a man who knows when to stay silent, who knows what to hold on to and what to release, is a man no woman can manipulate. You don't have to respond to every wave to prove you're a skilled sailor. Sometimes simply staying still and letting the boat pass through the storm, calm, steady, is enough to prove you're unlike any other man. Women may regret the man they once loved, but they will be haunted by the man they could never shake. And that man is you, when you choose peace over drama, maturity over being right. Section 5. Focusing on yourself is the path to becoming irreplaceable. True attraction doesn't come from chasing someone, but from running toward yourself. When you stop draining your energy trying to please others, you can fully invest in building a life you're proud of. Women aren't drawn to promises of change. They're drawn to a man who is living his path, unaffected by who's present or absent in his life. Liam's story. Liam was a software engineer in San Diego. After ending a 3-year relationship, he didn't try to get back together, nor did he rush into new relationships to fill the void. Instead, he returned to what he had once neglected, himself. He started going to the gym regularly, learned to cook, signed up for weekend photography classes, and jogged along La Jolla Beach every morning. Liam's life gradually became full, not because someone was beside him, but because he started living for himself. One day, his ex-girlfriend texted him, "I saw your new photo exhibition. You look really different. Happy, lighter." Liam simply replied, "Thank you. I've been taking care of what matters." No bitterness, no regret. Just a man who had moved through pain, and instead of building a tent in suffering, he chose to build a home in renewal. Reflection. Deep attraction comes from a life of depth. When you master your body, your finances, and your mind, you become someone who needs no rescue, who needs no one to fill the gaps. And that in itself makes you irreplaceable. Your presence is no longer about making an impression, but about radiating a state of being that makes others reflect on themselves. You are no longer the man who loved someone too much. You become the man someone once lost. Remember, your value does not lie in how others treat you. It lies in what you've built when they were no longer there. A man who no longer chases women isn't a man who stopped loving. He's a man who has started loving himself the right way. And from that moment on, he is no longer the one competing. He is the one being chosen. Section 6. Strength doesn't come from being chased, but from mastering your own emotions. Some men spend their entire youth asking, "How can I get her back?" But the better question is, how can I stop depending on whether she comes back or not? Because if your emotional strength is tied to someone else's response, you're living like a boat without a rudder. Wherever the wind blows, you drift. True strength doesn't come from words or temporary actions. It comes from the ability to stay still when everything around you tries to pull you away from yourself. Tyler's story. Tyler was a startup founder in Boston. He once loved a girl named Emily, someone he believed was the love of his life. When Emily left, Tyler fell into a deep void. He stopped going to the gym, lost sleep, neglected his work, and checked his messages obsessively, like an addict. But one day, as he looked into the mirror, sunken eyes, tired face, he suddenly understood. I can't keep being a slave to my emotions like this. So Tyler did something he had never considered before. He cut off all contact, took a month-long break from work, rented a small wooden cabin in Vermont, and stayed alone, with nature, books, and silence. The first day he struggled. By the third day he cried. But by the second week, he began to hear the voice within, the one long buried under the noise of unreciprocated love. Tyler wrote in a journal, practiced yoga, meditated, and read Epictetus. He didn't try to forget Emily. He focused on understanding himself. And from that point on, he no longer waited for messages from anyone. He began rebuilding his company, his body, his mind, little by little, like a man who had returned to his own territory. Reflection. It's not the woman who left that stripped you of your strength. It was you, when you abandoned yourself to chase after her. When you return to yourself, you no longer need her to return to you. The attractiveness of a man does not lie in how many people love him, but in whether he still knows how to love himself when everyone else walks away. A man who controls his emotions isn't someone without emotion. He's someone who doesn't let emotion control his path. And that's what makes him steady, untouchable, not a bad boy, but a calm man with a mission. Section 7. When you stop watching, you become unpredictable. And that's what creates attraction. In an age where everyone displays their lives on social media, digital silence might just be the thing that makes people think the most. No likes, no stories, no online status, no reactions, no appearances where they expect to see you. When you disappear with intention, you not only reclaim your peace, you create a sense of absence. And in that absence, the person who once took you for granted begins to feel uncertain. Ryan's story. Ryan was a freelance photographer in Brooklyn, New York. He once dated a girl named Chloe, an Instagram influencer who lived for attention. When they broke up, Chloe assumed, as with all past relationships, that Ryan would still quietly linger, still watch her stories, still like her posts, still leave vague comments, as if a part of him had never really left. But that didn't happen. Ryan didn't block her. He didn't delete anything. He simply went completely silent. His name no longer appeared in her story viewers. He sent no messages, left no trace. He switched his account to private, posting only photos of nature, artistic portraits, or deep quotes, without tagging anyone. Chloe began to wonder, where is he? Did he see the photo I posted yesterday? Is he really okay, or just pretending to be? But the only answer was silence. Ryan wasn't playing cold. He wasn't trying to make her jealous. He was simply living the life he had postponed for too long because he had been too busy watching hers. And the moment he withdrew his attention, he became unpredictable. And nothing confuses someone more than not being able to read the mind of someone who once belonged to them. Reflection. Silence doesn't make you weak. It makes you a mystery. And in a world where everyone is easily read, the one who cannot be figured out is the one who's remembered most. You don't need to post pictures to prove you're okay. You just need to truly be okay. And when you are, you don't need anyone to know. Because true strength doesn't come from getting attention from your ex, but from no longer needing that attention at all. A strong man is not someone who makes others regret, but someone who doesn't need to be remembered to live fully. And the moment you become unpredictable, you become irreplaceable. Section 8. When you build a full life, you leave no gaps. You become the man she can't control and can't replace. There's something many men don't realize. You don't attract others through lack. You attract through fullness. When you live a life filled with purpose, passion, and discipline, you're no longer someone who needs another person to feel complete. You are someone who already is complete, and that's what makes you irreplaceable, because you leave no gaps. Nothing left to regret, to hold on to, or to manipulate. You don't disappear to be remembered. You exist, not in their life, but fully in your own, so powerfully that others can't ignore it. Brandon's story. Brandon used to live in Chicago, working as the marketing director for a startup. After a painful breakup with Alyssa, his girlfriend of 3 years who had once been his whole world, Brandon felt lost. But it didn't last long. Instead of trying to find someone to replace Alyssa, Brandon returned to the things he once abandoned: his college piano classes, his dream of opening an independent coffee shop, and his desire to run marathons. In just 1 year, he opened a small cafe in Wicker Park, completed the Boston Marathon, and began performing piano every Saturday night at a lounge near Lake Michigan. He didn't pretend to be busy. He was truly living. And when Alyssa happened to see a video of him playing Claire Delunian, a mutual friend's Facebook page, she froze. Not because Brandon had changed, but because he was no longer the version of himself that had once depended on her love. He didn't wait. He didn't blame. He didn't cling to the past. He lived in a way that made others wonder, did I once have a man like that, and never realize it? Reflection. When you live a full life, you leave no gaps for anyone to fill, and that makes you impossible to control. You don't need to make her regret. You just need to live like a man whose life's direction is no longer altered by a woman's absence. Women aren't attracted to the man who's always there. They're attracted to the one they're no longer sure is there, because he's busy, living a real life. A strong man isn't the one she has to chase. He's the one she can't replace, because he never let himself be depleted. And when you are full, no one can make you feel empty. Section 9. The women who regret the most aren't the ones who lost the man who chased them, but the one who never came back. Some men disappear from a woman's life, and one day, in total silence, they become a mark in her memory. Not because they left loudly, but because they left too quietly to be forgotten. Women may regret the man who once loved them deeply, but they are haunted by the man they can't figure out. Did he really love me? Does he still think about me? Did I lose someone who can never be replaced? And the one who creates these questions is never the one who chases. It is the one who knows how to stop, knows how to walk away, and never looks back. Daniel's story. Daniel was a doctor in Seattle. He dated a girl named Jenna, a free-spirited artist, dreamy, romantic, but unpredictable. They loved each other for a beautiful season, but Jenna often overwhelmed him with mood swings, half-hearted breakups, and emotional games that kept Daniel constantly on edge. He had begged, comforted her, even wrote handwritten letters, but nothing ever changed. Until one day Jenna texted, "Maybe we need a break, just some space." Daniel read it, didn't reply, didn't react. Not because he was angry, but because he had awakened. From that day on, Jenna no longer saw Daniel's messages, no longer saw his name in her story views. No sign he was still watching. He vanished, not out of revenge, but because he had decided never to return to a place that didn't know how to value him. Months later, Jenna saw Daniel in a TEDx video. He was speaking about men's mental health, with the calm, confidence, and charisma of a man who had once loved deeply and had risen stronger from the ruins. Jenna sat alone in her Brooklyn apartment, phone in hand, scrolling through old texts, and for the first time in her life, she felt true regret. Not because he was now famous, but because he never came back. Reflection. The man who knows how to let go with grace, without noise, without revenge, is always the one who leaves the deepest regret. Not because he tries to create it, but because he is strong enough not to be pulled back by it. You don't need to do something grand for someone to regret losing you. You just need to live a life no one else could have lived in your place. Your absence, when it comes from depth and dignity, will always be remembered. The man who doesn't come back isn't heartless. He simply understands. True value doesn't need to be acknowledged, it just needs to be lived. And from the moment you never return, you become the one they can't stop remembering. Section 10. Strength isn't in making someone regret. It's in living a life that doesn't need validation. People often mistake emotional power for the ability to make someone regret, feel jealous, or come back begging. But the truth is, the greatest strength comes from no longer needing any of that. When you don't live to make someone regret, don't live to be validated, don't live to prove you're worthy, then you are truly free. And that freedom is the highest form of attraction no one can imitate. Logan's story. Logan, an independent writer living in Montana, once loved a woman named Elise. She was smart, sharp, and charming. But Elise always doubted, did Logan love her deeply enough? Was he interesting enough compared to other men she had known? Elise wanted Logan to change. She wanted him to be more outgoing, more visible on social media, more impressive to match her energy. For a while, Logan tried. He spoke more, dressed trendier, even altered his writing style to fit Elise's audience. But he quickly burned out, because he was living to be seen, not to be himself. Then one day, Logan disappeared from every platform. No more posts, no more messages, no more pleasing anyone. He returned to his wooden cabin in the Bozeman Mountains, wrote novels, fished, drank morning coffee in silence, and read Marcus Aurelius every night. He didn't try to become attractive, and that's exactly what made him untouchable. 2 years later, his debut novel won a regional literary award. Elise stumbled upon his photo in a magazine, no longer the quiet Logan of the past, but a mature, grounded man who was no longer within reach. She sighed, not because he had succeeded, but because he no longer needed her to become himself. Reflection. A strong man doesn't ask, "How can I make her regret?" He asks, "How can I live a life I will never regret?" You don't need to show up to be remembered. You just need to live so truthfully that if someone remembers you, it's because you lived too deeply to be forgotten. Live a life that needs no explanation. No apology for not being someone's preference. No lowering yourself to fit temporary expectations. A strong man doesn't need to walk away with thunder. He only needs to walk quietly, firmly, and deeply, so that his absence echoes in their mind long after he's gone. And when you've mastered yourself, you no longer need to be loved to know you are worthy. Final conclusion. The journey of self-possession. Stop trying to change just to be kept. Start changing so you no longer need to be kept. And when you live fully, not to retaliate, not to win, but simply to be worthy of yourself, then you'll stop asking, "Will she come back?" and start asking, "Have I lived as the man I always wanted to be?"